everyone. In this episode of Motive Tech, we're taking a look at my top 10 Skyline GTR tuning tips and tricks. Now, as our reputation for specialising in GTRs on our channel has grown, I've had more and more people who contact me directly looking for advice for modifying their GTR. Now, I try to get back to as many people as possible, but hey, there's a lot of questions out there from people who want to know more. So, over the next few months, we're going to be producing a tech video series called Motive Videos Skyline GTR Tuning Tips. Now, every video will cover a single topic, and quite often, that topic will be something that's argued about on the internet. So next time you see a discussion in a Facebook group, you can literally just drop one of our videos. And once that series is complete, the whole idea is we'll have a complete tuning guide for Skyline GTRs. So make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on all of those videos coming out over the next 6 months. Now, in the meantime, I've decided to put together this video, which is the top 10 Skyline GTR modifying tips and tricks that I've learned over the last 20 years in the car industry. Now, it's not to say there aren't other things to do to your GTR. These are just the top 10 things that I tell people are a great thing to do and I know transform the car or are very important. So, let's get into it. If you have a GTR with stock camshafts or drop-in camshafts and you don't have adjustable cam gears, my advice, tear everything off your desk at work right now, get out your computer, get on the internet and order some adjustable cam gears. I've said for a very long time that if your tuner tells you that you don't need adjustable cam gears in your GTR, get a new tuner because they don't know squat. The gains that you get from adjustable cam gears are one of the best bang for buck modifications you can do to your GTR and can massively change the drivability. Now, when we first modified our R32 GTR and we had standard camshafts, we saw some fantastic gains from adjustable cam gears, way more mid-range, turbo came on way earlier, but we didn't sacrifice any top end. When we put our drop-in camshafts into our GTR, we found the same. You can basically tune if you want to chase mid-range or if you want to chase top-end power based on how you want to drive the car. The only time that adjustable cam gears aren't really used is once you get into the world of camshafts that require the machining of the head. So think 9,000 RPM, 1,000 horsepower, etc. But if you have stock camshafts or drop-in camshafts and you don't have adjustable cam gears, you might as well pause this video and go buy some right now. Actually, no, keep watching. Now, this one is more specific to the R32 Skyline GTR, but another fantastic bang for buck modification, but this time for handling. Now, the factory steering shaft spacer is made out of rubber, and it's actually pretty sloppy from factory. So you can imagine after 30 years, it is hammered, cracked, deteriorated, and rubbish. So what do? You replace it with a solid steering shaft spacer. And what does this do? Well, it sharpens up the steering and actually helps make the car feel brand new again. It's very cheap, easy to do, and has a massive benefit, and a lot of people forget about it. So, what are you going to do? You're going to go buy one. Not right now, though. You're going to watch the whole video, write your list, then go shopping in the description below. Now, if you're not running E85 in your GTR, to be honest, you're ripping yourself off. It truly is the nectar of the gods, and the RB26 does benefit greatly from switching over to E85. You can make more power, you can make more mid-range torque, the car's more responsive, and most importantly, it's actually a lot safer to tune your car for big power. And it is the fundamental reason why there are now so many 7 and 8 second GTR street cars roaming around Australia. It's because E85 has allowed that to happen. Now, if you can't get E85 at your local service station, then get a large drum of it to keep it at your house. But for some bizarre reason you need to daily drive your GTR, well, then get an ethanol sensor and run a flex fuel tune so you can put normal petrol in during the week and E85 on the weekends when it's time to party. So without going to a separate 1-hour tech video on E85, the basics of it is E85 is more resistant to detonation. And it also has much better cooling properties when it's in the intake charge compared to normal petrol. So this means you can run more boost and you can run more ignition timing. Now, as an example, if you had a G35 Garrett turbo on your RB26, you'd probably call it quits at about 25 pound of boost when you're on normal petrol. But with E85, 35 pound or go home. So all these big boost pressures you see people running in Australia in their GTRs, it's because of E85. Now, another thing people don't realise about E85 is it actually makes your car more responsive. Why? Well, essentially, you need 30% more E85 to make the same power as 98. So what does that mean? Well, it means there's 30% more unburnt fuel in the exhaust gas. This makes the exhaust gas have more inertia, which means it spins the turbo easier and obviously spins it up sooner. So there's all these great things for E85, but there is also some downsides to E85 that we're going to cover in our own dedicated video later on. A common problem that we see in Skyline GTRs is that people run out of fuel a lot quicker than they would expect. And this is because the factory wiring to the fuel pump, well, it's junk. If you get out a multimeter and measure the actual voltage at the fuel pump on full noise while it's on the dyno, you'll actually be lucky to get 10 volts. So what's the remedy to this? Well, you rewire the factory fuel pump. Essentially, you want to run a new power cable from the battery to have its own dedicated relay and fuse near the fuel pump, and then you use the factory wiring as a trigger. Now, if you can get more like 14 volts at the fuel pump, you can then use the fuel pump to its full maximum level of efficiency. Now, for some reason, this is still an ongoing argument on the internet, and I'm not really sure why. Should you remove the four-wheel steer system from your GTR? Now, unless you are a collector trying to keep it dead stock, my answer to that is hell yes, you should remove it. Throw it in the bin right now. Now, a lot of people argue that if Nissan developed it, it must work. Well, plenty of things manufacturers develop for cars don't work very well. But just think of this. A, it's 30 years old, so it's probably worn out and doesn't really work very well anymore anyway. And B, if you've upgraded the power, if you've changed tyres and wheels, if you've lowered the car or upgraded the suspension, you've now totally changed the setup of the car, so the electronics that control that four-wheel steer system, they're now wrong. They're not going to work for that application anymore. Personally, I've found whenever I've driven a car that has HICAS still in it, that has a serious power upgrade or suspension changes, the car is very unpredictable and nervous. So, unless you're a collector, get your HICAS, throw it in the bin, set that bin on fire so that no other GTR can ever have that crap in their car ever again. Gone. Now, GTRs are known for their traction being all-wheel drive, but once they start to make some serious power, let's say 600, 650, 700 wheel horsepower, they actually start to become pretty violent on the street. They start to move around in tramline and they want to change lanes on you sometimes. Now, this comes down to the fact that they have an open centre differential up front and the front diff is offset to one side, so you have a short shaft and a long shaft, and basically this creates torque steer, something that front wheel drive guys will be familiar with. Now, putting in a front LSD helps even up the distribution of power up front and helps the car go dead straight. It is a fantastic upgrade to do. Now, don't confuse this with the guys that are making 1200 wheel horsepower and running on really big sidewall drag radials that move around a lot. That's a totally different phenomenon altogether. But basically, a front LSD will help even up the power distribution in the front, help the car go dead straight. Now, we installed a Quaife front LSD in our R32 GTR back when we did the Built 2.6, and it totally transformed the car. It went from being actually quite aggressive and dangerous on the street to just simply going dead straight. I consider a front LSD a must-do to any GTR with a built engine making any serious power. Now, if you've watched our channel for a while, you'll know all about our stock bottom end GTR development, and you'll also know that the stock bottom end didn't actually break. And when we pulled it down, there was nothing wrong with it. Well, that surprised the internet due to the inherent oiling problems that the RB26 suffers. Now, I'm sure that one of the things that helped that engine stay alive was an oil accumulator. Now, if you don't know what an oil accumulator is or how it works, we have a video on our channel that we've already done that you can go and watch, and the link is in the description below. Now, essentially, an oil accumulator stores oil pressure that then gets pushed back out into the system during low oil pressure or oil surge conditions. Quite often saves your engine, and you can also use it to prime the engine on startup, which is great for engine wear, especially when your car sits around for a while. Now, we installed an accumulator on Jet 200 and it actually solved oil surge issues that we had on certain corners at the racetrack, and obviously we had it in our GTR with a stock bottom end that also had a stock sump and a stock oil pump, and it lasted over 6 years. So clearly they work. In fact, I really don't know why you haven't put an accumulator in every single modified performance car that gets built. Now, this one's really basic, but I'm actually surprised how many people lower their GTR and don't install rear camber arms. Now, even though the GTR is all-wheel drive, it actually has a terrible camber curve in the rear. So if you lower the car and it has a lot of negative camber statically, as it squats, it gets even more negative camber and loses a lot of traction. So now your 800 horsepower GTR is lucky to get 2-second 60-foot times at the drags. And let's face it, what a waste of a GTR that would be. So having a lot of static negative camber in a GTR basically is not good. Now, you might think that you need that negative camber for better handling, but that same camber curve as the car squats also means as the car rolls onto the outside wheel as it goes around a corner, that camber curve means that outside wheel now has the negative camber that it needs mid-corner. So what does that tell you? You don't want lots of negative camber statically for either handling or drag racing. And the way to fix that is to install some adjustable rear camber arms. Now, in our R32 GTR, when we installed rear camber arms early on, that's actually what made us go from being a low 11-second car to a high 10-second car. So it is actually worth a couple of tenths down the drag strip, even in a pretty basic GTR on street tyres. So if you care more about going fast than getting Instagram likes, go get some rear camber arms that are adjustable for your GTR. Now, something I've been saying for a very long time until I go blue in the face is that one of the best things you can do to a Skyline GTR to totally transform how it drives is to convert to a 6-speed, either jet trag or sequential. Now, in my opinion, the 5-speed with 411s and also the jet trag in the R34 with the factory 3.5s is quite simply too long. The diff ratio just does not suit the RB26. Why did they do it that long? Well, I'm not sure. But to totally transform the car, what you want to do is shorten the gear ratios. Now, we proved that by mating a jet trag to 411 gears in our R32. And if you watch Adam LZ's channel, you'd see that his R34 switched to 411s based off our recommendation, and the results are pretty obvious. Not convinced? Do you remember the Mines R34 GTR demo car that's been plastered all over the internet and praised as this response monster? Well, that car doesn't have some engine voodoo magic that makes it mega responsive. It just has shorter diff ratios. They've either put 411s, 4.3s, and I've even heard rumours of some type of 4.6 or 4.7 diff ratio going into that car to make the gears really short, which helps make it really responsive and a whole load of fun. Now, I've got a little test for you. Go and find the video of the Mines R34, turn the volume off, cover the speedo and tacho with your hand so all you can see is outside the window, and have a look how fast the ground is moving and look at what gear he gets into on such a tiny little track, and that'll make you realise it has really short gearing, and that is part of totally transforming the car. Now, I'm not here to show you guys how fast it is in terms of outright power, but just how responsive it is. I mean, I can short shift and just get moving, and it absolutely honks this thing any gear, any time. Now, stepping up from the jet trag gearbox is going to a 6-speed sequential. Now, in these gearboxes, first gear is actually quite long, which can be beneficial for launching, but the reason they do that is so that 2nd through to 6th are very tightly stacked. And what this does is make sure the car stays on boost between gear changes, uses the rev range perfectly for a GTR, and obviously makes the car faster. Never mind the fact that it's also a dog box, making for quicker shifts as well. Honestly, switching to a jet drag or a sequential transmission totally transforms a GTR to the point that I would rather drive a GTR with 400 horsepower that has a 6-speed in it than drive one with 800 horsepower that has a 5-speed in it. The amount of people that went in my R32 GTR when it had a jet drag 6-speed and a GTX 35 and made 600 horsepower all got out of it in fear, thinking the car made 800 and was a low 9-second car. That's how much more fun it makes the car to drive. Might not necessarily be quicker down the drag strip, but it's way more fun to drive, way more fun to drive through your favourite piece of road or even around the racetrack, and totally transforms your GTR. In fact, now that I've driven 6 speeds in GTRs so much, I really hope I don't ever have to drive a 5-speed one again. Now, this is an argument that will never end, even though I thought I ended it 6 years ago with our twins versus single video. Now, if you haven't watched that video, make sure you check it out after this, as there is a whole bunch of data. But I will say this, when it comes to twin bolt-on low-mount turbochargers on an RB26 versus a well-thought-out single turbo setup, the single wins every time. No matter what the driving situation, no matter what you're doing with it, in every scenario, a single turbo kit is better. The end, case closed. Please stop arguing about it. Now, low-mount bolt-on twins aren't terrible by any means, and I don't hate them. They certainly have their place, whether it be in some type of collectible GTR or if you want your engine bay to look factory. Let's be honest, they still drive pretty good, but it's just facts that a single turbo kit can be made to perform better. I've had people try to tell me things like, oh, in certain driving conditions, the twins work better. That is rubbish. A turbo doesn't know how you're driving the car. It just spins up based on the amount of exhaust gas going through it. Now, a GTX 35 with a twin scroll rear housing and a twin scroll manifold will outperform any bolt-on low-mount turbochargers for both response and power. If someone tells you otherwise, they did the test wrong and have skewed it to suit what they want to sell you. Now, I've driven hundreds of GTRs with both low-mount turbo and single turbo setups, everything from budget conscious through to open checkbook. And I stand by my statement that single turbo is the way to go with a GTR. Now, if you want to run twins, that's fine. Go for it. I still like driving a twin-equipped GTR as well, and there are certainly plenty of builds that suit having twin low mounts. But if all you care about is performance and drivability, then a single is the way to go. You have better response, more mid-range torque, and you make more power. The end, single for the win. So I have an 11th bonus tip for you guys when it comes to tuning your GTR, and I thought I'd put this in after once again seeing the question on Facebook this morning of what oil should I use in my GTR, and the answer is 10W60. The end, case closed, argument finished, please stop discussing it. Now, many people will probably want to argue this, but I can tell you that we've done lab testing with Nulon and with Castrol in the past with results on various viscosities, and the GTR loves 10W60. If you're not running it, change right now. But we will do a full video explaining all of the reasons why in our future tech series, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.